If I were to title my spiritual journey, I would title it, God Forgives and God Makes Forgiveness Possible. As Drew Scott said, I was born in San Francisco to Russian parents. My father was born in Russia, and at the age of 4, he escaped with his family to Iran. He grew up in Iran till he was about 24 years old, which then he came to San Francisco and met my mom. At that point, they got married, and they had a son, which is my brother, who's a little older than me, and myself. At the age of 2, my parents decided that they wanted to get us out of the so-called wild city and move us to a small country town. So our little white beat-up Ford car drove across the Bay Bridge to a small dusty country town called Kerman. Kerman is about 18 miles outside of Fresno, California. And the best way I can describe Kerman is that it is population 500, 100 people, 400 goats. Country life for us was very interesting. We had many different chores to do, things that city kids didn't get a chance to do. I remember my brother and I, one of the biggest things we enjoyed doing was being able to drive the tractor. Well, we actually steered it because my dad had to touch the pedals. Our legs were too short, but once our legs became long enough, we were able to drive the tractor at 7 years old. My sister eventually came into the family, so there were 3 of us kids, and we always teased my dad and said, now you have farm workers, because that's what we would do, is work on the farm. We would cut the weeds on the cotton fields, and that was part of our chores. We also had many animals, and my sister and I called our animals our zoo. And my dad would tell us, do not call them your zoo because that's your food. But you know, when you're taking care of animals and feeding them every day, you do get attached to them. And so he would tell us, don't get attached because you'll be eating your pet. And I don't want you crying when you'll be eating your pet. One animal that we did not have was a horse, and that's because we couldn't eat horses. I remember my sister and I really wanted a horse, so we trained our pet pig, which we called Snorky, to give us rides. And both of us would get on the back of Snorky, and she would just gallop right to a mud puddle and just plop right in the mud puddle, and we would fall in there. It was just a fun way of trying to pretend like you had a horse, but it turned out to be Christmas ham later on. Times were tough for us financially, so my mom had to go to work in the daytime. And my mom worked many long hours in the daytime to help make ends meet for our family who was struggling financially. My father worked at night, and it was during the day when my dad would watch me and the kids, my brother and sister, but mostly me, that things occurred to little girls that should not happen to little girls. And the abuse continued. It didn't happen one time, it happened many times. For many years, and I hid this shameful secret of sexual abuse for many years of my life. I would spend my time escaping my pain by making little clothes for my dolls. And one of the vivid memories I have is finding the most distraught, disheveled dolls that my sister would probably pull the hair out, and she would throw them in the back of the closet. And what I would do is pull them out because they were so dismantled and ugly, and I enjoyed making them look beautiful. And for me, I think as a little child, it was therapy because I felt so ugly and dirty inside that to beautify something was what I think brought healing a little bit to my heart. I was able to make something that looked ugly pretty, just for the time being, and in a way it was kind of healing what I was experiencing. You could say that I had the best dressed dolls in Kerman because my dolls did not wear jeans, they did not wear flannel shirts, they didn't wear brown boots, and that's basically what I had to wear. And I used to love doing hair, but my hair always had to be in braids, like Laura Ingalls. We had to have the hair in braids, and my dolls kind of had a wild hair, so it was kind of fun. At the age of 10, I was really 10, and I had a dear friend of mine who I used to play with. She's a neighborhood friend. She passed away immediately. We don't know why. I think they don't know. They never told me. But she died, and I just remember that I was playing with her one weekend we were playing with our dolls, and then she died. And I was so distraught by this because I was very close to her. And I started to wonder in my little mind, where do people go when they die? And death started to haunt me. I remember not wanting to go to sleep super tight in fear that if I fell asleep real tight, I might not wake up. So sleeping became a problem for me. My mom, one day, I was probably already close to about 12, so I was dealing with this fear for about 2 years. And she took me to hear a missionary speaker who was a lady from China. And her name was Miss Chan. And she wrote a book called In the Line of Fire. And so my mom said, let's go, it'll give us something to do at night, we'll get away from, Dad. I felt at that time that I had two fathers. I had a sober dad and I had a drunk dad. And so most of, it was a confusing type of an upbringing because my dad would tell us things while he was sober one way, and then he would change it because he would forget, and he was drunk another way. So it was quite a confusing upbringing. But we went to hear this speaker, and she talked about how she was basically tortured for her faith, and her captors, brought her and her family members and put her in a holding area where they just beat her, and they tried to basically cause them to renounce their faith. And one of the tactics that these torturers did was blindfold them and put them in like a firing squad. And she says she remembers being blindfolded and having the guns shoot off, and she could feel and hear the whizzing of bullets, but they never hit her. And it was just another form of torture. They never shot at her, but they shot like around her. I was enthralled by her story because here was a lady who was facing death, and she just seemed to have such a sense of peace about her. She shared how this helped her by knowing what the Bible said, gave her that peace, because she would be repeating the quotes that her mom told her in the Bible, such as, the Lord will never leave you and never forsake you. And so when she quoted to the group of us that we should not be ashamed to stand up for what Jesus said, it touched my heart because I was always very quiet and nervous, and I didn't really want to make a stand, but she encouraged us through the Bible quote that said, if anyone is ashamed of me, God will be ashamed of him. And I saw that through her sharing of her story, how she found the perfect peace in the midst of dying. She went on to share how we all sin. We all have wrongs in our life. And I remember sitting in the chair thinking to myself, well, I'm so young. The worst thing I'd probably ever done was swipe the bubble gum. But she went on to say that even stealing something small, she didn't know I stole bubble gum, was still considered sin in God's eyes. And that God came to demonstrate his love for all of us, that while we were yet sinners, Jesus died for us. She went on to say that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, he will, and God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. When Miss Chen had asked if any of us wanted to ask Jesus to come into our hearts, my brown boots that I was wearing with my jeans, I was ready to get up and do this because my heart was ready, wanting the peace that she had. And so she led us through a prayer, and I repeated after her. Afterwards, I was just excited about what I did, and so she encouraged all of us who did